love with David. She was called Michal, and she was the daughter of Saul. Michal fell deeply in love with David. She was arrested by his handsomeness and his strength, and the only problem was that Michal's dad, Saul, didn't quite have the same affection for David. In fact, David was somebody who he had come to resent because David's success was threatening his home success. And jealousy had got into the heart of Saul, and jealousy was in his closet. And now his daughter was falling in love with this guy who he resented. And all of a sudden, Saul saw through his daughter's heart for David a plan for his own bitterness to be passed on to another generation. Be careful who you allow to dress you. Be careful whose issues you are made to wear. Be careful the opinions and the conversations that you put on if you were not present when the conversations took place. Be very careful, because the enemy would love to send people into your world of mind that will put their issues on us and then ask us to go out and fight their battle. And Michal was one of those people. What started off as a deep love for David, her father saw he could take advantage of. And it says in 1 Samuel 18, now Saul's daughter, verse 20, Michal, was in love with David. And so when they told Saul about this, he was very pleased. And he said to himself, I will give her to him, because then I will use her as a snare against him. He already had a plan in his heart to put his issues on his daughter. It says when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and his daughter Michal loved David, he became more and more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy from that day forth. All of a sudden, she was going to have suggested to her some things that she would wear. David, over time, had distance from Michal. He went to battle. He was away from her for a long time. And anyone who's been married or with someone for a long time knows that there are days that are awesome and there are days that are awful. Let's just be honest. There are days when he is Prince Charming, and there are other days where he's more like Shrek. And so her journey in marriage with David was not one of, romance every day and perfection. It was one that was filled with tests and trials like most of our relationships are. But here's what I've discovered, because I just celebrated my 20-year wedding anniversary last week. We renewed our vows on the beach. And as we stood there on the beach and we renewed our vows, and I got to wear a better dress than my first dress, and I actually had a very surprise guest fly in last minute. You might have seen it on Instagram and Periscope, which was Nat, who I had no idea was coming, and her and Bernie flew in to be there, and she walked in the door and I screamed and she screamed and I cried and she cried, and then I screamed again and she screamed again, and it was a whole mess. And then I grabbed the bouquet that someone had sent to my room to say congratulations, and I found some twine on the toilet paper in my hotel room, and I ripped the bouquet apart, and I got the twine, and I made a bouquet, and I went, bridesmaid! Literally. But as we stood there on that beach with my hair blowing in the wind and the sunset, and it was all romantic, you could think, wow, you have it all together, but let me tell you, over 20 years, it doesn't always look like that. There are days when it's no wind blowing, and there's no sunset, and there's no dress, and there's no makeup artist, and you know what? Life is like that, let's be real. But what I've discovered over 20 years is that when you wake up in the morning, how you clothe yourself will determine how you handle the bumps in the road. And if you get up in the morning and you place on you bitterness, and if you get up in the morning and you place on you you're not good enough, or resentment, or negativity, or the argument from last week you are still wearing, when you get up in that morning and you clothe yourself that way, let me tell you, when the bump in the road comes, which it will, the bump will kill you. The bump will wipe you out. But if you get up in the morning and you say, this morning I redress myself in love, I redress myself in grace, I redress myself in forgiveness, and I redress myself in compassion. I tell you, when the bump comes, you are better clothed to handle the bump than you would be if you'd worn the other wardrobe. But every day Michal got up and she began to wear a little resentment, and she began to wear a little bit of bitterness, and before long, it was all she would wear. And as David was out of town and her bitterness grew and her loneliness loneliness and her isolation and her company of her father festered within her soul, she began to get more and more of this wedge of separation happening. And you know, the enemy does not mind if you wear your ugly clothes in private. Some of you are here and you look angelic. But if I was to ask your husband, or maybe your colleague, maybe a teenager, maybe a parent, they would say, well, that's their Sunday outfit, but it's not their Monday outfit. But I found the enemy doesn't mind if you secretly wear that stuff for a while. Because just like the show What Not to Wear, he has a plan. And just like that show What Not to Wear, there is a big reveal moment where the maximum impact is made by the new wardrobe. And everybody is gathered and it's a public showing of this makeover. And the enemy loves to publicly humiliate you. He loves to let your attitude not just be seen by one or two, but by as many people as possible. He's after maximum impact and damage in your relationships, in your finances, and in your marriage. So he'll wait. And that's exactly what happened. And her big reveal moment came in 2 Samuel. And in 2 Samuel 6, as there was a great day of celebration, and as the Ark of the Covenant was being returned by her husband David, and as there was great singing and dancing in the streets, it says that she was not present at the party because her bitterness kept her away from the party. See, when bitterness enters, it begins to tell you you're not worthy of being in the party, or that there's somehow secretly they don't want you there. No one had said she wasn't welcome at the party, but her own attitude removed her from the party. And it says she sat on the window ledge and she watched from the window. And as she saw David dancing, it says, she despised him all the more in her heart. Verse 20, when he came in the house to bless his household and to bless his wife and to bless the servants, it was the big reveal for her bitterness. And instead of ruling it, her bitterness spoke. And she said, how have you distinguished yourself today, dancing like this, so undignified, half naked? Any vulgar fellow would do that. And David knew exactly where the wedge had begun, and so he went straight to the point. And he said to her, it was before the Lord I was dancing. And by the way, it was the Lord who chose me over your father. In other words, I know where this began. I know where this resentment was first put in your wardrobe. And it was not my fault. And he said, I also have to let you know, if you thought that was undignified, I'm about to get a whole lot more undignified than this. And it says at that moment, she could not look at him and she could not receive what he was saying. And her bitterness ate on the inside of her. And verse 23 says, from that moment, she became barren for the rest of her life. And I need to let you know something. Your bitterness will create barrenness. Maybe there's an area in your life where you become barren. Maybe barren of friendship. Maybe barren of love. Maybe barren of compassion. Maybe barren of laughter and joy. Maybe barren of tears of gratitude. Maybe barren of words of hope. I want you to know that God has a harvest full of it for you. But there are some things maybe you need to clear out because of. There are things that you maybe need to remove. And that is our prayer for you over this event. That maybe you could just start to identify things on the rail that don't suit you and don't belong there. And say to the enemy, enough is enough. You know, every year when we do this event, we like to take a moment to just honor someone in the room that does not know that this moment is going to happen and certainly doesn't expect it to be about them. And we try to find stories of people that have done exactly what I've just said. When there's been an opportunity to wear depression or wear hardship or wear bitterness or wear pain, they have somehow had the courage and the strength to say no and to pick up something different and to wear something different. And tonight there's a woman in this room right now that we're going to honor. And we're all going to honor her because though she's one individual, I believe that individual stories represent all of our stories. When one sister overcomes, we all overcome. When one person says, I'm going to be more than what my past tells me I should be, we all step forward and we all gain ground. And that's what I love. The spirit of Dare to Be is that we cheer one another on, that we honor one another, we celebrate one another. Let's bring that back to the church. Let's not compete. Let's not fight. Let's not push each other out the way. Let's lift one another up. And so tonight we want to honor a woman in this room that is a single parent. And though we don't know her personally, we know of her story. And as she raises her son on her own, she's gone through many, many different traumatic and testing experiences. From losing her brother that was tragically killed and lost him 5 years ago, to caring for a parent that is mentally unwell, to struggling to provide for her son and for herself, and believing God that there is a better way and a better life that He has for them, and just trying with all her might to put one foot in front of the other, and has had difficulty, and even in the last few weeks has had crime in her own home and on her own property. And yet this woman runs this whole thing where she serves people in her community, and she goes and serves people that are in pain and on dialysis machines, and she gives her own money and her own time to try and make someone else's life better. What's she doing? She's saying, I could wear poor me, but instead I'm going to wear I bless someone else. I could wear my life is hard, but I'm going to wear I trust God. And this single mama, we want to honor you tonight. So I'm going to ask Tiffany Gary, who has no idea this is her moment, I'm going to ask you to come and join us on the stage. And as she does, I would love us all to honor her as she comes. Where are you, Tiffany?
You need miracles in your own life, but you're not sitting around and waiting for that miracle to come. You are constantly being a miracle in the life of somebody else. But tonight, we want to be one for you. And you have not asked for a single thing, but someone who loves you has told us how difficult it has been for you in the last several weeks and months just to make your ends meet. And we wanted to give you this, which is paying for your next